What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is a very special episode. I want to do a little bit of a reaction video talking about one of my heroes when it comes to politics, but also to philosophy and to some extent my spirituality. I think that Jordan Peterson, as you can see in the title already, is one of the most well articulate people, and one of the critiques, probably one of the only critiques that I have of him as a speaker and somebody who is a philosopher, I guess you could say, is his lack of acknowledgement of Christ being the Son of God, Christ being the Messiah, the three in one, God himself. And some rather big news that's come out on notthebee.com is his interview on his latest podcast, where he talks about the deity of God and the way the narrative of life and reality tend to merge, specifically when it comes to the story of Christ. He touches on the historical connotation of, him being a real person and the fact that Christ did exist, and so it makes it really hard to deny. But I want to take a look at it. I want to react to it with you guys, alongside you guys, and just, enjoy this moment, because I think that these are one of those times where you have these little revelations that lead you down your walk with God, and it starts to really change your perspective on things to where you can no longer deny who God really is. So let's take a look.
To some degree, the conscience can be viewed as the voice of reciprocal society within, and that's a perfectly reasonable biological explanation. But the thing is the deeper you go into biology, the more it shades into something that appears to be religious, because you start analyzing the fundamental structure of the psyche itself, and it becomes something. Well, becomes something with a power that transcends your ability to resist it. So you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. To a much lesser degree. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now, you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense, because it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter, because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived, plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief, and I don't understand it. Because I've seen.
This is incredible. We're going to keep watching for a couple more minutes, but first of all, let me point out that he reads his own critics, which I think is an incredible attribute that Jordan Peterson holds that probably not a lot of other people hold, right? He's actively searching for people who are correcting him. That's something crazy. Also, the fact that he's reading C.S. Lewis now is really, really telling of where his intellect is going and in which case it's going, because he could as easily be, going towards the side of what's his name, Richard Dawkins, or any of these popular atheists, right? And he does disprove them a lot of the time, even without claiming a Christian worldview. So it's interesting to see him now looking at the theologians of history, C.S. Lewis. I hope he starts reading Charles Spurgeon, and I hope he starts reading some of the fathers of the church, just going back, generations. So it's great to see where his intellectual curiosity is heading and what that's going to end up producing, because there's very few people, honestly, that can read people like C.S. Lewis and leave without having some semblance of knowing that Christ is Lord. So Let's keep going. I think this is an amazing little snippet of the internet. Wow.
Sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity.
Yeah.
And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ.
All right. This is crazy. Okay, so what I see more than anything, what I see is not this famous, teacher of philosophy or this social psychologist talking about, the different ways that we can interpret scripture or how scripture works within the context of reality. That's not what I see here. What I see is a guy that's been struggling for the last couple of years with his health. He's been facing his mortality head on. He's been looking at death in the face for like a year at this point, and he's starting to realize there's no way that Christ isn't who he says he is. And I see a broken man in this video, a broken man who he's never been arrogant about the fact that he's imperfect, but I see him humbled beyond where he was, let's say, in his ascension to fame, to where now he's realizing that his worldview was floating without the basis of the idea that Christ is God and that biblical truth is the ultimate moral framework that he talks about there, right? He says it. He says, the narrative of this world is morality. It's what we should do and what we shouldn't do, how we should live our lives. And he's starting to make the connection that the only time that morality has interjected into reality is the person of Christ, where it was perfectly sewn together, where it perfectly harmonized. That's a big revelation. And it's going to be hard for me to understand if he doesn't start to see Christianity as the truth. It's going to be hard for me to understand why, because usually once you get to this point in your walk, once you get to this point in your intellect, you start to say, all right, well, there's not really any turning back from this. And you could see it in the video. He says, I'm surprised by my own belief. And it usually goes that way. It usually is kind of a surprise when you start to say, oh my gosh, have I not been believing this guy for so many years? And it turns out it's true. Once you get to those fundamental understandings of morality, reality, objective truth, you start to see that there is no objective truth without the idea of Christ. Christ is the embodiment of objective truth, the embodiment of morality, and the embodiment of humanity, what we should be, right? Not what we are, but what we desire to be. That's why Jordan has called him the Christ figure for so long. He sets it as this goal, right? He sets it as a target for us to live as morally, because he saw the perfection of Christ as a myth, but now he's looking at it and saying, well, there's historical context for him. There's proof that he existed. His words are well documented. How is this not the answer? And so I just wanted to leave this here. I wanted to show you guys this because this is so exciting for me. I mean, Jordan Peterson, he's had such an influence on the way I just look at life in general, manhood and religion and the way I formulate ideas. It's not that he's my pack leader. It's not that he's my pastor or anything like that, but he's an incredibly intelligent person. For him to be talking about these kind of things, it's not an appeal to authority. It's me looking at another person who is maybe just finding their faith. And that to me is a beautiful thing, regardless of who it is. And so I'm excited to see where this goes. And this was a short video, but I was so excited to do it. So as you guys know, I have a Patreon. If you want to see me put out more content like this, just hit up my Patreon, patreon.com/angelkiros. There's already a few people that are contributing, and I just want to thank those people sincerely. Without you guys, I can't do this. Without you guys, there is no YouTube channel. There is no talking about Christianity and politics and morality and all these things. So just thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. And make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. You know, even if you don't have, you know, you don't want to sign up for the Patreon, that's fine. The least is just mash that like button. All right, guys. Peace.